I don't know whether any of you have ever been to one of those fancy, important kind of, either it's like a celebration, it's an awards ceremony, it's kind of a big fancy thing, kind of one of those meals that happens at Westminster or Buckingham Palace where there are seats, and depending on how important you are, the closer you are to the guest of honour. Or whether maybe you can recognise it more from a plane journey. Row 5A in business class and row 34B in economy are technically the same journey, but boy, they don't feel like the same journey. Or maybe you remember the moment that you got onto a school bus and all of the cool kids, they ran to the back of the bus and you were stuck next to the toilet. Seats seem to matter. The amount of life that is about where we sit. We can spend so much of life scrambling for a better seat. A seat that proves we matter, that we're successful, that we belong. And that can be kind of flowing in our mind. And then Jesus tells a story about where to sit. And we'll come to that. But our readings, let's kind of jump into the context of those readings, why they're written and why they're written. In Psalm 112, it's part of Israel's wisdom tradition. It paints a picture of the good life, a life rooted in the fear of the Lord, marked by generosity, justice, and courage. It was written to form Israel's imagination, to say this is what it means to truly be blessed. But blessing, according to the psalm, isn't about our wealth or our self-preservation. It's about trusting in God, living with open hands and using whatever we have to bless others. And then we fast forward to Luke, and Jesus is at a meal. And this picture of the psalm plays out in real time. He's at a Pharisee's house enjoying some dinner. However, I don't imagine that these dinners were anything like what I would expect a dinner to be like. I imagine that it's a bit more like in Downton Abbey, if anybody has watched Downton Abbey recently, where the Dowager Countess spends a lot of time, this is speaking to a very specific part of this group, but it worked perfectly in the morning. Saying nothing about the congregations, and there's so much work around how and where someone's going to sit, who's going to sit next to someone, and how well that person's going to be able to communicate with that person, what they're going to talk about. There was so much work around that, and it feels a bit like this meal at this Pharisee's house is the same. It's not just a casual dinner, but public theatre, where you sat showed your status. Who you invited showed your honour. And boy, did the Pharisees love the best seats. Boy, did they love to work out how to get the best seats. And into that world, Jesus sitting at this table tells all of these people who spent their life finding the best seat, creating honour for themselves, says, don't scramble to the top, just sit at the bottom. And when you host, don't just invite the people who can pay you back. Invite the ones who can't. I once knew a guy who he had it all. He had money. He had a pretty good office. He kind of was pretty proud of himself that he had everything because he fought for it. He climbed the ladder. He earned his seat at the table. But then his career collapsed, and he then had to admit quietly that without the fancy office, without all of the people kind of clamouring for his gratification or to be able to be heard by him, he quietly admitted that he didn't really know who he was without his success. And then I've met different people, but one person jumps out to me who she didn't really have a lot. Her fridge was nearly empty. Her life was stretched by bills and childcare. But she brewed a great cup of tea. She pushed the last biscuits across the table and told me with a smile how God had been faithful to her that week. Those two lives, one chasing security through success, but always fragile. One with very little, yet marked by joy, trust, and generosity. I want to argue that Psalm 112 would say that of the two people, the single mum is the one that is blessed. And so Jesus takes that picture that we see and makes it personal for his audience. Now, for anybody who hears the word Pharisees and thinks, yeah, the Pharisees, they're terrible, awful, horrible people, I hate the Pharisees. Often when we hear stories like this, the Pharisees usually relates to us. We're usually the Pharisees. We're usually the ones that are being spoken to. So let's just put ourselves into that, just in case, like me, often you read it and you think, yeah, the Pharisees suck, they're awful. And then I have to remember that that's me, who also sucks, but that's fine. The Pharisees thought that blessing meant being seen, being respected, being honoured. Honour was kind of this scarce resource that they had to compete for, to grab the better seat, to get noticed by the right people. Invite those who will invite you back. But Jesus says that the kingdom of God is not built like that. The kingdom of God is not built on that game. For so much of life and so much of what we know of the world is that blessing is about achieving. But in God's kingdom, it's about trusting him. The honour comes from being noticed, but in God's kingdom, honour comes from humility. That generosity is calculated, but in God's kingdom, generosity just gives and gives and gives. And here in this story, in this reading, he's not just Jesus is not offering just table etiquette, where you should sit, just to help out the Pharisees as they go to their next party. No, he's flipping the whole script on its head, the whole kind of society on its head, the whole way that the society works. The Pharisees just wanted to be able to climb higher, and Jesus says, go lower. Because God's blessing isn't found at the top table, it's found when you make room for the people at the margins. And of course, it would be really easy for Jesus to just say that, and for us to be like, yeah, okay, you are Jesus, that makes sense, we'll go with it. But he doesn't just say it, he lives it. He left the highest seat in heaven, and he took the lowest seat. He died on the cross. And in doing so, in that moment of dying on the cross, he made room at the table for me and for you. And so, here on the 31st of August at 10 to 5, let me remind you that that's the gospel. That we don't have to scramble for a seat at the table, that we're already given one. Not one that we have to work for or make happen, but one that's given to us by grace. And we celebrated communion here a few weeks ago, and we often do that in the morning, and we'll do it more here. And one of the things I love about communion is that it happens on a table, that it is a meal, that it's a meal that everyone is invited to. No matter what status we have, no matter how much money is in our bank account, no matter how great we think we're doing, there is always a seat at the table. There is always space. There is always enough to receive him. And as we receive him again and again and again, we're brought back to that moment where he died on the cross for us. And we are able to be in relationship with him once again. So I wonder if maybe there are a few questions for us to ponder this evening or this afternoon and in the week to come. Maybe in your life it feels like maybe you're fighting for a better seat to be more important, to have more prestige just for the sake of it. Maybe the Lord's asking for something from your heart in that, to lay down some of that for him. And maybe there are a few of us who we're overlooking people that God is inviting us to notice. Because the blessed life isn't about climbing higher. It's about stooping lower. It's not found in keeping, but in giving. It's not measured by who notices you, but by who you notice. Which feels like a challenge. And so the encouragement is that grace that gives us opportunity to come to the table to receive from God is the same grace that helps us do all of this stuff that sounds challenging, that sounds hard, where we have to lay down who we are and trust that God has our best. We do it through his grace. We do it through all that he has for us. And so often, most weeks, I'm generally just kind of speaking to myself to do this stuff better. And so we're doing this together. We're going on this journey together of how do we be the ones that create the culture, create the atmosphere of love that then others come into and are like, oh, okay, this is different. Oh, okay, this is a thing that I can be a part of because this is a place that just loves because it loves. They've clearly received something that is different that I want to be a part of. So let's take a moment to be still in God's presence.